I would say I am very, very grateful for my family. And then it would be probably this show. Um, and I'm grateful for, being in a really healthy, wonderful relationship. So I have a lot. And my sister.
I
have so many.
think Benny might question the order of It starts with I have the greatest person who does hats.
Right.
Then I guess and Ben. And then yeah.
My list is the same, but put not in front of everything.
Out of here.
There's goods and bads of being in the industry at a young age. Though my life was that way, I just chose to accept it and try to do my best with my work. It has been a bit of a challenge to transition. Sometimes people want me to stay in a place that I'm just not anymore. And I'm happy and I'm just doing the things that I love now.
എനിക്ക് 16 വയസ്സുള്ളപ്പോൾ കണ്ടുമുട്ടിയത് ഒരുമിച്ച് ജോലി ചെയ്യാൻ പോകുന്നതുകൊണ്ടാണ്. ഞങ്ങൾ പരസ്പരം കണ്ടുമുട്ടിയത്. അത് നല്ലതായിരുന്നു. എനിക്ക് ഒറ്റ ചങ്ങാതിമാരെ പോലെ ആയിരുന്നില്ല. അവൻ തമാശക്കാരനാണെന്ന് ഞാൻ കരുതി. ഞാൻ തമാശക്കാരനായിരുന്നു. ഈ വ്യക്തി വളരെ തമാശക്കാരനാണ്. പക്ഷേ എനിക്ക് അതിൽ ഒന്നും തോന്നിയില്ല. ഞങ്ങൾ ഉടൻ തന്നെ അവിവാഹിതരായി വീണ്ടും ഒന്നിച്ചു. അത് ക്യൂട്ടാണെന്ന് അറിയാവുന്ന ആരെങ്കിലും എനിക്ക് വിളിക്കാൻ ഞാൻ അവനോട് ആവശ്യപ്പെട്ടു. അവൻ പറഞ്ഞു, "ഓ, ഈ അത്താഴ രാത്രികൾ ഞങ്ങൾ കഴിക്കാറുണ്ട്. നീ വരണം." ഡബിൾ കോട്ട്. പിന്നെ അടുത്ത കാര്യം, ഞങ്ങൾ ഡേറ്റിംഗ് നടത്തുകയാണ്. അവൻ തുടക്കത്തിൽ തന്നെ ഭയന്നിരുന്നു. കാരണം അവൻ പറയും, "ഇത് ജോലിയാണ്. ആളുകൾ ദേഷ്യപ്പെടാൻ പോകുന്നു." ഡബിൾ കോട്ട്. എനിക്കൊരു കുഴപ്പവുമില്ല.
സെലീന എന്തെങ്കിലും പറയണമെന്ന് എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു. അറിയാമോ, നീയും വരണമെന്ന് ഞാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നു.
നന്ദി. രമ, എന്നിൽ വിശ്വസിച്ചതിന് വളരെ നന്ദി. റെക്കോർഡുകൾ തകർക്കാൻ കഴിഞ്ഞ ഇത്രയും അത്ഭുതകരമായ ഒരു ഗാനത്തിന്റെ ഭാഗമാകാൻ എന്നെ തിരഞ്ഞെടുത്തതിന് നന്ദി. കേട്ടതിനും സ്ട്രീം ചെയ്തതിനും നിങ്ങൾക്കെല്ലാവർക്കും നന്ദി. എനിക്ക് ഇതിലും വലിയ ബഹുമതി ലഭിക്കാൻ കഴിയില്ല. നൈജീരിയയിലേക്ക് എന്റെ എല്ലാ സ്നേഹവും അയക്കാൻ ഞാൻ ആഗ്രഹിക്കുന്നു. നന്ദി.
Do you still speak Spanish?
Not fluently, because I got my first job at 7 and I immediately, was, saying everything in English. So, but to reconnect to that has always been really important to me. I released a whole album in Spanish. And, having the opportunity to do this was really special for me. So I love getting in touch with that side.
Was it difficult?
No, it was really
Not to act and
No, it was really comfortable. Yeah, it felt really comfortable for me.
You know what really crosses a line for a lot of people, but somehow still gets treated like entertainment? The moment the world decides a woman's body is public property, her health, her timeline, her choices, her future, all up for debate. And few people have been subjected to that kind of relentless scrutiny, quite like Selena Gomez. For years, strangers felt entitled to question whether she could have kids, whether she should have kids, whether her body was failing her, whether her life was somehow incomplete because she didn't fit a timeline the internet made up for her. And here's the part that makes this story impossible to ignore. After all the rumors, after all the speculation, after years of people confidently declaring what her body could or couldn't do, it turns out they were wrong. But to understand why that revelation matters so much, you have to go back to where this pressure really began. Selena Gomez didn't slowly step into fame. She grew up in it. She was a child on television before she was old enough to fully understand what privacy even meant. By the time most people are figuring out who they are, she was already a recognizable face, moving from kids' TV into global superstardom. And with that level of visibility came something far darker than fame itself: ownership. The idea that because people watched her grow up, they somehow knew her, that her life choices were open for commentary, that her relationships, her appearance, and eventually her future were fair game. At first, it looked like standard celebrity gossip: who she was dating, what she wore, whether she was happy. But quietly, something else crept into the conversation. Questions about settling down, questions about marriage, and then, without warning, questions about motherhood. Not because Selena ever brought it up, but because society always does. And then her health entered the picture, and that's when everything crossed into dangerous territory. In 2015, Selena revealed she had lupus, a serious autoimmune condition that affects millions of people, but is still widely misunderstood. 2 years later, she went through a kidney transplant, a life-altering surgery that saved her life. That should have been the moment the world backed off. That should have been the moment empathy replaced entitlement. Instead, it became fuel. Suddenly, people weren't just curious about her career anymore. They were dissecting her medical reality, speculating about medications, drawing conclusions about her future, and most disturbingly, debating whether her health meant she could ever become a mother. Entire threads popped up online, analyzing her body like a case study. Headlines danced around the idea without ever acknowledging how invasive it was. And strangers, people with zero medical training and zero connection to her, spoke with shocking confidence about what her body was capable of. But this wasn't concern. It was control disguised as curiosity. And that's where the double standard becomes impossible to ignore. Male celebrities go decades without having children, and it barely registers. No countdown clocks, no invasive interviews, no speculation about their bodies running out of time. They're allowed to age, to focus on work, to exist without explanation. But women are treated like walking timelines. Hit your late 20s without kids and people start asking questions. Enter your 30s and suddenly it's framed as a problem. Add fame to the equation and the pressure becomes suffocating. Selena wasn't just navigating a demanding career and serious health challenges. She was doing it while millions of people watched the calendar on her behalf, waiting to decide whether she had failed some invisible test. And then, after years of this narrative being pushed as fact, the story cracked wide open. Recent clarification from medical professionals familiar with her situation revealed something that completely upended the assumptions. Despite the speculation, despite the certainty people projected onto her life, pregnancy was not automatically off the table. Let that sink in. The confident declarations, the viral conversations, the years of people acting like they knew her medical future. All of it was based on assumptions. This wasn't some dramatic announcement from Selena. It wasn't a life update or a reveal. It was simply the truth surfacing after being buried under years of noise. And yet, by the time the truth came out, the damage had already been done. Imagine living for years under a cloud of public speculation about the most intimate parts of your body. Imagine opening your phone and seeing headlines debating your ability to create life. Imagine being asked, over and over, questions you never consented to answering. Silence becomes interpreted as confirmation. Speaking out becomes an invitation for even more intrusion. Selena was put in an impossible position, and no matter how gracefully she handled it, the weight of that pressure doesn't just disappear because the narrative changes. But here's the part people rarely acknowledge. Selena wasn't the only one affected by this. When millions of people watch a celebrity's medical situation get turned into gossip, it sends messages far beyond that one individual. Women living with lupus saw those conversations and internalized fear. Women who had undergone transplants read comments that treated pregnancy like an impossibility. Speculation doesn't stay contained, it spreads. And when misinformation is louder than medical reality, real people absorb the consequences. What makes this even more unsettling is that Selena never had to share her health journey in the first place. She chose transparency to help others feel less alone. She spoke openly about her struggles when silence would have been easier. And how was that vulnerability rewarded? By turning her body into a debate topic. By treating her medical history like entertainment. By crossing boundaries no one would accept in their own lives. The irony is painful. The more honest she was, the more entitled people felt. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Why did this clarification even need to exist publicly at all? In a world that respected boundaries, Selena's reproductive future would be known only to her and her doctors. But celebrities don't live in that world. They live in one where silence is twisted into narrative, and privacy is treated like deception. So even correcting misinformation becomes a burden. And then there's a deeper layer that rarely gets discussed, but it's the part that exposes just how broken this conversation really is. Even if the medical reality had been completely different, even if pregnancy carried extreme risks or wasn't possible at all, that still would not justify the obsession. It still wouldn't give strangers permission to speculate, analyze, or mourn a future that was never theirs to define. A woman's body is not a public project, and her value does not increase or decrease based on what it can biologically produce. Motherhood is not a single path, no matter how often society tries to present it that way. biology is not destiny, and fulfillment does not come with a universal checklist that every woman is expected to follow. Yet, the way this entire conversation unfolded made one thing painfully clear. We still live in a culture that quietly, and sometimes loudly, ties a woman's worth to her ability or willingness to reproduce. Adoption gets dismissed as a backup plan. Surrogacy gets treated like a technicality. Choosing not to have children gets framed as selfish, immature, or somehow incomplete. And all of those judgments rest on the same outdated belief that a woman's body exists for public evaluation and approval. That's what makes this story so unsettling, because Selena Gomez is not lacking in accomplishments. She is an artist who has shaped an entire generation's soundtrack. She has built a career that spans music, film, television, and business. She's created a successful brand, advocated openly for mental health awareness, and shown vulnerability in an industry that often punishes honesty. By any reasonable measure, she is fulfilled, impactful, and accomplished. And yet, despite all of that, so much of the conversation surrounding her life still circles back to one question she never owed anyone an answer to. That should make us uncomfortable, because this story was never really just about Selena. It's about every woman who has ever been asked when she's finally having kids by someone who doesn't need to know. It's about every woman who's been made to feel like her timeline is a problem to be solved, instead of a life she's allowed to shape on her own terms. It's about every woman who's been subtly or directly told that her body exists for commentary, critique, and speculation. The anger that rises from this story isn't rooted in celebrity culture alone. It's rooted in recognition. Recognition of a pattern that keeps repeating, no matter how many times we pretend it's harmless curiosity. Recognition of how normalized this kind of intrusion has become, especially when it's framed as concern or interest. Recognition that respect, for women, so often comes with conditions they never agreed to meet. So, where does that leave us? Maybe it leaves us with a responsibility to pause before we ask questions that aren't ours to ask. Maybe it challenges us to rethink the way we consume stories about women's lives, bodies, and choices. And maybe that's where this story really lands, not as another viral moment, but as a quiet reckoning with how easily entitlement gets disguised as interest, and how long we've accepted that as normal, not on a headline, not on a medical update, but on a mirror. Because if this conversation makes you uncomfortable, it should. It forces us to ask why we've normalized turning women's bodies into public discussions, why curiosity keeps crossing into entitlement, and why silence is so often treated like permission. Selena Gomez never owed anyone an explanation, not about her health, not about her future, and certainly not about motherhood. So, if this video made you think twice about the way celebrity stories are framed and how easily speculation becomes cruelty, then this channel is for you. Subscribe if you want conversations that go deeper than gossip, stories that challenge the narratives we're told to accept, and perspectives that actually respect the human beings behind the headlines. Because sometimes the real story isn't what everyone is talking about. It's why they thought they had the right to talk at all.